In this video, we're going to take a look at using the roof tool. So here I have a building that is without a roof, and we're going to, we can see that these walls are on the second floor. And so we'll go up, we'll go into floor plan. This is our second floor. And what I found is it's easier actually in some cases, not all cases, but when I want to do a magic wand, I'm not able to do that through a trace. So let me show you. Here is, I'm on the roof story. If I trace, when I try to do a magic wand, well, I guess I could do it here. That actually does work. I can magic wand inside the building. Normally what I do is I want to magic wand one of these wall sections, but it's trying to trace the actual wall element itself, which is not very helpful. So I have a couple choices. I can either trace here, which I'm fine with, or the other way is to go down to the second floor, trace this edge of the stud, copy it, and paste it up to the next story. Same concept. I'm going to actually just do it on the roof with the trace. And that's not where I want my pivot point. So two things. First, let's go into the roof tool now, and we'll set up a few parameters. So we're going to set up a 4-inch pitch. I'm using a composite plywood over 2x10, 9.5-inch wood. I want to do an offset of 16 inches for the roof overhang. We'll do a 60-degree angle on the edge of the roof. To the current story, we're going to do 0, which is fine. That I set the story to top of second floor plate, so the roof is 0 is at the top of the plate, and I think that's gets us a good start. Now we can go into 3D, and now we have a roof on the roof story. And let's look at this section. You can see that the roof's coming through, pivoting on the inside of the drywall, which is not what we want. So now let's go back to the roof plan. And if we choose this node, we can move the pivot point back to the inside face of drywall, look at the section, boom, moved right through there. And that's exactly what we were looking for. Notice that the 16 inches is perfect. It's a horizontal dimension, and it's to the very tip of the plywood. So that's what's going on with that. Now, a couple of considerations. First one is I don't like using the roofs like this because it generally doesn't depict what I really want the roof to look like. The rafters and the fascia are generally not the same dimension. I may have rafter tails. I may have a boxed in soffit. None of those options are available if I do it with the roof only. So my suggestion is, instead of doing a thick a composite roof, I generally just model the plywood itself. And if I look in section, now my plywood's in the wrong spot. That pivot line is always the bottom of the roof, and it's currently at 0 to the story, to the home story. So I've already got this line offset. This is, I measure it, 7.5 perpendicular to the slope of the roof. And so I'm going to move this whole roof with an F5 up to that point and delete that line. And now the plywood is where it would be with conventionally framed 2x8 roof. One thing to consider, and I'll just trace it here. So if I have the rafter coming through, we have a bird's mouth here. So the roof, the rafter comes in down. The pivot point wants to be the inside face of stud when I'm doing a conventionally framed roof. If I'm doing a trussed roof, I'm going to take that same line, and it depends. Usually I go to the outside of the, have the truss company measure the outside of the plywood. And this is, say, 2x4, so it's 3.5 inches. And then the ceiling member, let's make these lines easier to see. I just do a gray fill here to so this is the bottom chord, top chord. Missed a little bit there, but you get the idea. The pivot point ends up being either the outside of the stud or the outside of the plywood, however you want to do it. And it's 3.5 inches up. So you'll use that to determine where your pivot point is. If it's conventionally framed, align it here. If it's trusses, align it here. And then obviously you'll have to figure out your stand to get the roof at the right height. So for now, we're going to just continue with the concept of the conventional framing. So the bird's mouth. And I like the bird's mouth all the way over my plywood. So we have that circumstance. And so our roof is at the right elevation. Now we have a hole in the wall or below. Let's look at 3D. So we have this little void, not bueno. We want to do something about that. There's two choices. The easy choice, and not necessarily the bad choice, is to take this wall, extend it, and then trim it. I'm going to do something a little different than that. And I'm going to use a special wall that I call roof block. And I'm going to end up, I can, and it's not tracing well. I'll trace this. Select all the walls. I'll flip them. Turn my trace back on. Suspend groups, and then I'm going to take this up to here. And you'll look in, when we look in section, you'll see I've got a special wall. What it is it's stucco, plywood, and then just 1.5 inches of framing, and it represents the block. And I use that to plug the space between the second floor wall and the roof. You don't have to do it. It could be just the second floor extended up. Totally your choice. Now we'll go to 3D, And we have this. I ran it through high on purpose so that we can trim it. And just to make this a little easier, I'm going to use the filter. And I'm just going to go roof to roof. So we're only seeing the roof story. And you go, what is this red thing? Okay, this red thing is something I turned on, trimming bodies. And that's the trimming body for the roof. And if you're having problems trimming your walls with your roof, it's because your trimming body is a problem. And I struggled with that, and it took me some time to figure it out. So if I go to the roof and I open up the parameters, I can change the trimming body to the actual contour, the outside of the roof. And now everything will work fine. So if I hit W, Control A, select all my walls, right mouse, connect, trim to roof. I'm going to select the element. You can see down here, you got to walk through this in the right order. Select the roof. And then we choose, do we want to keep these or these? These or these? And we obviously want to keep the bottom. And now we are trimmed. And if we go in here, we see that we've been trimmed. Now, what's going on here? Good question. That is the priority of the wall being more than the priority of the plywood. So you can either adjust, and this is merging because this is plywood and this is plywood. One solution would be, and I think this is okay. We could make a different material for the roof plywood. That's what I'm going to do now. And I may regret this, but let's do that. Roof plywood. Roof. Everything can be the same, except we're going to pump up the priority. This element, is not at 0. So let's fix that. So take all these walls and bring the bottom to 0. That fixed that. And now let's see what this block, edit, composite, wall framing. So we want to look at that building material. We'll go to 3 is my shortcut to building materials. Wall framing has a 560. Plywood roof has a 707, which should be fine. So we just need to select this and make this plywood roof. And there we got a trim. So the priorities of the building materials are going to influence how these interact. The other way you could do it, if you don't want to mess with that, is to do a solid element operation and you get a similar result with a little different process. So let's go back to the roof. Let's go to 3D. So to turn off that trimming body, and you don't have to select the element. It's a on-screen view option. So it's going to cover everything. That toggles that on and off. So if you had any issues with that, that's the reason. Now looking at this roof, I've got a cover fill on this roof just to help us see it. So that's cover fills right there. That's why we're seeing these lines. These are the foreground and background for the roof. And this is nice. You can do distortion. So the steeper the roof, now this pattern's not going to distort because it's in line with the slope. But if you had another material that was going horizontal to the slope, it would change the spacing between the lines so that it represented the foreshortening of the material. So that's kind of nice. Okay, so now this is a multi-plane roof. We did it with the magic wand. It's very easy to do. And there are two separate things going on here. We have the blue line, which represents the underlying geometry of the roof. And then we have the boundary line. So one thing we can do is we can start to manipulate these ridges. And if we square this up here, we're going to make a gable. Let's look at that in 3D. There's our gable. Okay. Now I want to manipulate, I'm using just my standard polygon tools. I want to manipulate the boundary, and I can do that separately. Now it brought my gable end back, which looks perfect. And so because the roof and the walls are associated with one another, I have the ability to continue to model, and everything will just continue to update nicely. We also can adjust this boundary any way we want. So if we want this to be a large overhang, if we want to do some polygon manipulation here, we can cut that roof back. We can change the eaves in one wall and not the other. So we can modify this however we want, and works out very, you have a lot of control. That's what I'm trying. Now, if you want to turn this into a gable, we would do the same thing. We would move this. We would move this boundary. Moving my origin with shift, control shift, 16 inches. Now, if we want to make this, turn this back into a conventional gable or a hip, you can see that what this is doing is it's moving that point, but it's not forcing it to be the same pitch. So you can see that that's laid back substantially different pitch, which is nice because we have that choice. But we need to force this to be a 45-degree angle off this geometry line. So now that it's 45-degree angle, we know that the pitches are the same. You can also take roof sections and skew them back and forth. Again, this is forcing all of the roof pitches to change to make that manipulation. So I'm not going to do that often. Let's say you wanted this to be an overhang. We can come in here and grab the geometry line, and maybe we put a post here. And we can change the configuration of that roof without ever having to split any of that up. Another thing we can do is, if we get the boundary, do a minus, and we now have the ability to cut holes in the roof. So this is great for a roof deck where we need to carve a hole in, but we still want to maintain the multi-roof. And so we can move these edges as necessary, and the roof stays put together just right. We can control the edge, like, so maybe this edge needs to be plumb. This is our clicked edge. We can change the surface. Maybe this needs to be cherry. Now, in this case, it's not very obvious because it's just the piece of plywood. But nonetheless, you have the complete control over manipulating this roof. So you can move the ridges, you can remove the boundaries, you can, if I want to bring this out, I can bring this out. I can do that either with the moving of horizontal ridge, drag the point or the ridge or the boundary. And it ends up being very sophisticated without too much headache. And it's all dynamically trimming these walls. So here I have a gable, now I have a gable end. That's why I like doing this little wall fill. Now you might want to say, okay, well, this wall is now a gable end and it shouldn't be the little block anymore. So you could change that wall type to be the wall below. Let's look at that. And so now maybe this should be a exterior stucco plywood 4x. And that'll give you a true gable end just by changing the composite. It heals nicely. Maybe you don't want the gypboard if you want to take the time to make another wall type that doesn't have the drywall. That's probably not a bad idea. The last thing I'll show you here is, let's delete this hole. I just clicked the hole, not the whole roof, and that deleted it. And something that I often do, especially before this tool was as powerful, is I split the roof into individual planes. I'm going to use Shift Control G, ungroup these. Now I have individual roof planes. Now there's a little more management I have to do, but there are times when this is really the best way to do it. And when I do this, now I'm responsible to make these roofs join. So I often start with the multi-roof, even if I do separate them individual planes. I often start with the multi-roof and then explode it and then manipulate it. And sometimes I just have to do this if I want to blend roofs with flat roofs or something like that. So there are times when that needs to happen. So let me show you how to manipulate these roofs. So a given roof has a pivot line. Instead of having that blue line that ran all the way around, now I have individual segments. They don't have to be the full length. Like, doesn't really matter. They're just representing a vector and a position. So I have this anywhere along that line, it's exactly the same thing. I usually make them a little smaller so they're not visually so overwhelming. And that represents the height of the roof that is determined here. And it explicitly gives us the rotation of the roof plane. So this is the pivot line. This is, and so perpendicular to that line is straight up the slope. And if I need to manipulate these, you'll see I'm creating holes in that roof, and there's a couple ways to fix that. So one of them is to just move the points. Also have if I want to extend to, I select the roof I want to extend to, have the roof tool selected, hit control, and it'll do an automatic extension to that roof so that these blend. But even if these roofs were both in error, they're both held back, I can select that roof, have the roof tool selected, hold control, and that's the plane that that roof should go to. I can do the same thing here, roof selected, and that'll bring that over. And so I'm healing these roofs. So I want to go to this roof. This is the one I want to adjust. So select the one you want to go to, and then select the one you want to adjust. So this roof, I want to adjust this one to this roof. This is the 2 roof. This is the adjusted roof. Boom. Boom. Okay. So that's a really nice way of healing things. Another way to do this is I can actually get control of this roof point. So vertically, I am adjusting these individual planes. So it's keeping the same pitch, but I'm independently adjusting the height here, or more commonly, I'm keeping the same pitch, but adjusting the height. So sometimes you need to hit a particular point. So let's take the properties of this and inject them in that. That gives us the same elevation on our pivot point. Come over here and grab this, and then you can see what I'm doing. I'm just hinging off that pivot point, but changing where it hits. So this can sometimes be useful. If I want to just get it back to the same pitch, I can inject those properties. I can select this roof, select the roof tool, hit control, and close that up. And take this, move it up to here. Sometimes you should do that in 2D just to make sure you got the right point. Yeah, that's fine. And you still have this roof is still trimming. So if I move this wall, this roof up independently, let's see that the wall's following it. So those are, even though I split it, it maintained those association, the relationships between the trim of the roof and the trim of the wall. All right, so that gives you some insight into how to manipulate the roofs. Start by using the multi-roof tool, multi-plane. It gets you there, the multi-plane gets you there really fast, and then you can just adjust it as necessary and have fun with it.